I started out with some espresso that I wanted to see how it behaved in water. I thought it was kind of cool to see the espresso disperse in water. And I started this set of experiments that was really just to play around with. So I took some videos with this had coffee grounds in a cup, and then I had espresso in a pipette, and I just shot it in there. But I noticed something that was interesting is coffee behaved not quite like a solid. It felt more like a liquid. And it wasn't a liquid. So I started playing around with it. So this meant just moving it around in the cup and just observing. And then I started to really shoot strong amounts of water at it to see how it would react. And I decided to put a filter in this cup at the bottom. I had to put water, then a filter, then coffee on top, and then water on top of that. And the coffee was already extracted. So I started shooting water in here to see, do you see coffee grounds going through the filter? Because the coffee grounds are a lot finer than the filter holes, so it would stand that coffee could get through. In this case, the only reason coffee is getting through is the coffee above it is all mixed up. It's not flat in a coffee bed. I should also note that this coffee experiment doesn't have a top filter. So it's not quite like espresso, because espresso is trapped in the filter, in the portafilter. So I continued to look at these experiments and trying to see, at what point would it get through to the filter. And usually if you impulsed the water flow, it would kick up a lot of coffee, but it wouldn't get quite to the bottom. And once the coffee was mixed up enough, the coffee grounds started coming through this bottom filter. So I wanted to just play around with this. I just liked seeing it and I liked recording it. So I took all these recordings and I made one long video, because it's an experiment that anybody can do at home. You can take spent coffee and put it in a cup with some water and let the coffee settle and just see how the coffee reacts. So again, it was I did this quite a few times. I just left it on the counter because it was fun to play with. And it seemed to take a while to get to the bottom in certain cases. I believe this one is a staccato shot, which is why it's not getting quite to the bottom as easily. So mild disturbances don't cause too much kick up, but when you have too much of a kick up, there's a problem. This is probably why in pour over there's a lot of fines migration to the bottom, but in espresso there isn't. So I continued to mess around with this, just seeing how it flowed. I just enjoyed the visual. It almost felt calming. So then I sifted some spent coffee, and I did 2 layers. I did less than 500 microns and then greater than 500 microns here. So I made these 2 samples wet already before they went in. So then I put water on the bottom, then the filter. So this is the fine layer. I did carefully put this into the cup, lay it out, because I wanted the 2 layers to not get mixed. And then that's the coarse layer. So then I put the coarse layer on top. And then I slowly added water to this to fill it up without disturbing the coffee bed too much. So I start slowly putting the water in. A second here, there it is. I used a spoon and a little pipette to get it to go a lot slower. It doesn't kick up as much coffee. But even this amount of water flow kind of kicked up some coffee. And it's interesting here that a little bit of water flow doesn't mix up coffee too much, but if you have a continuous stream of water flow, you get a lot of coffee moving around and floating. So in this case, these coarse grinds settle right back down. It's usually the fine ones that can stay high in the mixture, and it takes a while for them to settle. So then I flattened it out a little bit with a spoon and let it settle. And then I took a look at trying to poke some holes in this, and the coffee doesn't get down through the bottom. It doesn't start coming out of the bottom until I get through the finer layer, because this finer layer is protecting the water flow from getting down to the filter. But once all the coffee kicks up enough, you can see it starts to come through. I was careful because I didn't want to have to re-sift this coffee to do this one again. So I did it from a few angles. But even looking at how the coffee on top moved, so a lot of this is the fine coffee that took a while to settle. And it was just nice to look at. So this again, the staccato is after it resettled from another side. So I was blowing coffee down that one side, and it doesn't get through until the very end, until it starts getting through the fine layer itself. I did this again just to take a look. I just enjoyed watching coffee move around. And I'm hopeful that one day we'll get a naked portafilter with a clear basket where we can better see what's going on in the puck. There was one made for La Pavoni, but the headspace was a bit too much. And then I've used a Compresso as a transparent portafilter, but the issue with that is there's, again, no top screen. So it's you can see how coffee flows through, but not necessarily when you input water into the coffee. Where this kind of gives a feel for what happens when water hits the coffee and hits the coffee in an uneven way. So in this test, you can see there's like a little metal thing on top, and that's a shower screen that I just put on top of this to see what would happen. And the shower screen blocks the flow from going in all sorts of directions. The flow ends up going through the shower screen and out the side of the shower screen, which is why the shower screen starts to angle in this way. But it wasn't able to push coffee through the bottom of the puck until the very end, and it's simply because the shower screen has angled almost to the edge of the bottom screen.